The sun was a soundless siren, humming through metal and bone as the SUV left the last sign of shade. The road liquefied ahead, bending light until distance meant nothing. Lucas' grin stayed fixed behind polarized glass. Mara's screen blinked excessive heat alert, and still no one spoke of turning back. Serena traced the skyline with a fingertip as if she could will it closer. Noel framed the moment through his lens, proof they'd started something no one else dared. Eli stared at the mirage-trembling horizon, pulse keeping time with the rumbling engine. The desert was too still, too watchful. Even the air seemed to whisper, "Turn around now." But they had already written the ending in their pride. All that remained was to drive into it. Hours blur into vibration and light. The playlist loops, words melting into static harmony with the tires. The farther they drive, the flatter the world becomes. No shadow, no landmark, only the sense that time itself has stalled. Mara checks the temperature gauge, already redlining. "It's fine," Luca mutters, pressing harder on the accelerator. Serena opens the window and instantly shuts it. Air hits like an oven door. Noel narrates into his camera, voice forced, claiming this is the hottest day on record. Eli keeps noticing mirages that resemble road signs, but when he points, there's nothing. Their laughter sounds hollow, echoing off invisible walls. The horizon twists itself into illusions. Pools of water that vanish, ridgelines that move. Conversation turns stilted. Mara counts the miles out loud. Numbers lose meaning. Noel suggests stopping for a shot of the landscape, but when they pull over, the silence feels predatory. Wind crawls across the dunes like a whispering crowd. Luca laughs too loudly. Serena doesn't join in. Eli steps out, camera pointed down the road that seems to curl back on itself. He feels it then, the faintest tremor beneath his boots, like the desert breathing. "Guys," he says quietly, "I think it's trying to tell us something." No one answers. The bar of service disappears. Phones die in sequence, each screen dimming to black as though surrendering. Luca smacks the steering wheel. A burst of heat dusts his skin. Mara calculates distance by memory, muttering town names like prayers. Serena digs through the cooler, water already lukewarm. Noel keeps filming, sweat streaking his lens. "People love the struggle," he says, forcing a grin. Eli stares out the window, seeing reflections move out of sync. The road is no longer a promise. It's a dare. Somewhere behind them, thunder mutters with no clouds to show for it. Late afternoon turns the desert bronze. The air vibrates with insect hums that might just be the heat itself. They crest a rise and find another sign, half buried, shot through with rust. Road closed ahead. Luca slows but doesn't stop. "Probably old," he says, and Mara almost believes him. Serena glances at Noel's camera. It's still rolling. "Get this," she murmurs. "It'll look epic." The SUV passes the sign, wind kicking a spiral of dust that twists like a question mark in their wake. Eli watches it fade, pulse drumming in his ears. The sky seems to tilt. Somewhere beyond the heat shimmer, the first true silence waits. By noon, the desert had turned into a mirror that burned. The SUV hummed uneasily, its engine note climbing an octave higher than comfort. Mara watched the temperature needle creep toward the red while Luca insisted it always did that in heat. The air inside thickened until every breath felt weighted. Serena's voice came faint. "Can anyone smell metal?" Noel wiped his lens. Even the camera's housing was hot to touch. Eli leaned forward, eyes fixed on the wavering horizon where distant shapes shimmered like a city floating on air. He wanted to say something felt wrong, but couldn't tell whether it was mechanical or cosmic. A faint pop sounded beneath the hood. Small, final, foreboding. Still, they drove on. The first wisp of steam unfurled like a ghost through the grill. Luca slowed but didn't stop, Pride turned the wheel for him. The playlist died mid-chorus, and for a heartbeat they heard nothing but wind dragging over metal. Mara suggested pulling over. Luca shook his head. "We're almost to the ridge." Serena pressed her forehead to the window. Heat radiated back like touch from another world. Noel kept filming, eyes glassy behind the viewfinder, capturing the moment the mirage split the sky in two. Eli whispered that the air looked alive. No one disagreed. The engine coughed once, then twice, like a living thing gasping for water. When the car finally died, it did so gently. No drama, just silence that dropped like a curtain. Dust settled around them in lazy spirals. Luca stepped out first, muttering, "She just needs to cool." The air swallowed his words. Serena followed, scanning the horizon for movement. Mara spread a map across the hood, its edges curling instantly. Noel's camera beeped a low battery warning. He kept filming anyway. Eli circled the vehicle, feeling heat radiate from the metal like breath from an animal. "Well, wait an hour," Mara said, voice steady, rehearsed. The desert answered with nothing but wind. An hour passed, then two. The sun refused to move. Shadows shortened until they vanished. Inside the SUV, plastic softened, and water tasted of dust. Conversation thinned to fragments. Noel whispered into the camera, voice gone small. They said, it'd be dry heat. Luca refused to meet anyone's eyes. Mara tried the ignition. Nothing. Serena hummed softly under her breath, the sound fragile as glass. Eli thought of waves, of oceans where the air was blue and moving. He opened the door, and the horizon breathed out a furnace wind that made the others flinch. "We can't wait here forever," he said. No one answered, but no one stopped him either. The map said a rest stop lay 15 miles ahead. To Luca, it sounded achievable. To Serena, it sounded fatal. The group fractured quietly. Mara and Luca convinced the ridge would hold cooler air. Noel and Serena doubting the distance. Eli caught between them. They packed bottles, cameras, and pride into backpacks that already felt heavy. Wind rose, scattering their footprints before they'd taken 10 steps. The car gleamed behind them, still steaming, a monument to every warning ignored. "We'll be fine," Luca said, smiling for the lens. The desert shimmered back as though laughing. Their shadows stretched ahead, thin, wavering lines leading nowhere. The ridge they'd aimed for never seemed to arrive. It stretched ahead like a mirage duplicating itself. The world shimmered in layers, every color boiling toward white. Luca led the line, his voice clipped, claiming he recognized rock formations that kept changing shape. Mara tried to orient the compass. It spun without purpose. Serena shielded her eyes and muttered that the air looked alive. Noel trailed, filming quietly, breathing through his shirt to filter heat. Eli lagged last, whispering to himself the way people do when sound feels safer than silence. The road behind was gone, erased by wind. The desert had turned into a mirror that reflected only exhaustion and pride. Each step felt wrong. The sand hardened, then softened, as if breathing underfoot. Serena called for them to stop, convinced she'd seen a road scene, then realized it was just shadow. Noel replayed the footage. The shape was gone. Mara tried to keep track of direction by the sun, but its position seemed to flicker with every blink. Luca pushed forward, muttering about the ridge again, his voice cracking in the heat. Eli touched the ground. It burned. When he stood, dizziness made the landscape tilt. "It's playing tricks," he murmured. The others didn't answer. Somewhere far off, whined sculpted ghost voices that almost formed their names. A glint appeared ahead, blue and liquid a promise. The group broke into uneven jogs. Bottles clattered. Backpacks swung. The air vibrated with hope so sudden it almost hurt. But as they approached, the pool fractured into heat haze. The illusion dissolved into sand, dry and glittering. No one spoke for a long time. Noel's camera hung at his side, lens dark. Mara knelt, fingers sifting through powder that looked wet but wasn't. Serena turned her back to the light, eyes closed. Luca cursed the sky, his voice fading into the roar of wind. Eli looked down and saw footprints leading in circles. He realized then they'd been walking through the same frame again and again. The compass needle trembled like a trapped insect. Serena suggested retracing steps. Luca refused, claiming he could see tire marks ahead. Mara argued quietly, her voice frayed. The light shifted amber, turning their shadows long and uncertain. Every sound echoed. Footsteps, breath, the creak of backpack straps, each returning delayed, distorted. Noel whispered that maybe they'd already passed themselves. Eli thought it sounded plausible. For a strange moment, laughter broke through, sharp and wild. Then silence swallowed it. Even the wind stopped. The world waited for a choice none of them were ready to make. By evening, the sun hung low and cruel, bleeding red light across the salt flats. They saw their SUV again, or something that looked like it. Same color, same shape. Excitement surged, but when they reached it, the vehicle was gone. Only heat, shimmer remained, trembling like breath. Luca's voice cracked as he shouted, the sound stretching thin in the open air. Mara covered her face. Serena whispered that maybe the desert wasn't empty. Maybe it just mirrored whoever entered. Noel lifted his camera one last time, capturing 5 reflections where 5 people stood. The light bent around them, soft and merciless. Night would come, but it wouldn't bring cold. Only a different kind of clarity. By morning, the light was a living thing, crawling across their skin like thought. Luca insisted the ridge still lay ahead. Serena swore they had already passed it. The air shimmered between them, distorting words, making every sentence arrive half a beat late. Mara tried to reason, to count steps and compass turns, but her own voice sounded distant, like someone narrating a story she no longer believed in. Noel filmed the exchange, eyes dull behind the viewfinder, capturing the silence between phrases. Eli listened to their echoes and realized he could no longer tell if they argued aloud or only in his head. Somewhere, a wind moaned across the flats. Low, continuous, almost musical. They walked in silence until silence became sound. Every crunch of sand echoed back as if someone else followed. Serena started counting steps. Luca muttered coordinates. Mara whispered a running list of supplies, each word swallowed by glare. Noel replayed old footage for reassurance, but the screen showed landscapes they hadn't crossed yet. Eli felt the rhythm of their breaths fall out of sync, 5 heartbeats scattered in different tempos. The desert had tuned itself to dissonance, each note unraveling the fragile melody that once held them together. When they stopped, no one agreed why. The first voice came from behind them. Serena's, though she hadn't spoken. It said, "Keep left." They all froze. Noel lowered his camera, pulse visible at his throat. "Did you hear that?" Mara asked, but her words rippled like they'd been dropped in water. Luca laughed once, brittle. The heat folded the world into layers. Figures flickered at the edge of sight, pacing in parallel. For a moment, Eli swore he saw a second group walking beside them, identical in motion, faces blurred by light. He blinked, and the desert was empty again. The echo faded, leaving only the hush of distance. By afternoon, even the compass needle gave up, pointing nowhere. Luca strode ahead, convinced movement meant survival. Mara followed reluctantly. Serena stayed behind to mark their trail with stones, though each mark blurred as soon as she stepped away. Noel filmed fragments, hands gesturing, mouths moving without sound. Eli walked a few paces apart, tracing the horizon where the sky bent down to meet them. He wondered if direction mattered once the world itself was circular. Behind him, Voices rose. Accusations blurred into static. He didn't turn. The argument was part of the wind. Now, evening brought no relief, only geometry. Angles of light, shadows, sharp enough to cut. The group moved as though choreographed by exhaustion, crossing triangles of shade that vanished before they reached them. Serena stopped first, whispering she could hear water below the ground. Luca shook his head. Mara looked toward the faint line of mountains that had never grown closer. Noel sat down, camera balanced on his knees, recording nothing but glare. Eli turned slowly, realizing their footprints formed a perfect spiral curling inward. For the first time, he felt afraid of stillness. The sun slid lower, slicing the desert into mirrors that reflected 5 drifting ghosts. When the sun finally sank, the world didn't cool. It just changed color. The desert turned copper, every grain of sand reflecting a muted glow like embers in slow motion. Their voices felt too loud against it. Luca broke the hush first, suggesting they keep moving before darkness erased direction completely. Mara answered softly, calculating the miles that might still exist between them and the ridge that refused to arrive. Serena said nothing, tracing the outline of a distant mountain that kept shifting. Noel filmed in fragments, letting the camera wander across their silhouettes. Eli watched the light dim and realized that the silence wasn't absence. It was something waiting. Night crept up in layers. Blue, then indigo, then a strange metallic gray that shimmered without moonlight. The wind rose again, but it wasn't cool. It was sharp, carrying grains that clicked against their clothes like glass beads. Luca urged them onward, flashlight beam trembling across dunes that shifted beneath their steps. Mara stumbled once, caught herself, and smiled weakly. "I'm fine," she said to no one in particular. Serena's voice drifted from behind. "Listen, it sounds like the sand's breathing." The others paused. For a heartbeat, the wind actually did resemble breath. Long, patient, then it was gone. Stars appeared, but not as they remembered them. Each one flickered with faint distortion, as if filmed through static. Noel pointed his lens upward, whispering that the sky looked pixelated. Luca muttered about exhaustion. Mara murmured that maybe they'd wandered past maps entirely. Serena sat down, pressing palms into cool sand, smiling faintly at the simple relief of touch. Eli traced constellations with his finger and realized the patterns didn't match. Orion, fractured, misplaced. It didn't matter. The silence deepened until even the wind seemed to listen. The desert wasn't empty. It was recording. They began to see light that shouldn't exist. Thin ribbons along the horizon, bending upward like mirrored lightning. Luca dismissed it as reflections from the highway they'd never reached. Mara said it was the heat still rising from the ground, even after dark. Serena whispered that maybe it was the desert remembering the sun. Noel recorded in silence, capturing their faces as the glow pulsed brighter. Eli closed his eyes, counting heartbeats, feeling the light pulse with them. The effect was mesmerizing, like standing inside the breath of something enormous and unseen. They forgot to be afraid. Just before midnight, the glow faded and the cold finally arrived. Thin, brittle, and almost welcome. They stopped walking. The air felt too clear, as if reality had sharpened its edges. Luca lowered his pack. The others followed without words. Mara looked up. The stars now steady, infinite. Serena's laugh broke the silence, soft and real. Noel turned the camera toward the group, framing them in one last shot. "Say something," he said quietly. No one did. The wind passed through, carrying only the sound of the shutter clicking once. The night held still, as if saving the moment. At dawn, the desert looked clean again. No footprints, no echo, only the long blue sweep of emptiness. Helicopters moved in slow arcs above the flats, blades scattering dust into spirals that vanished before touching ground. The search teams spoke in clipped radio bursts. Coordinates, grid numbers, confirmation of nothing. The sun climbed, heat already reclaiming the silence. On a ridge, a rescuer found a single camera half buried in sand. Its lens was cracked, but the red record light still blinked once before fading. They marked the spot, called it Point Alpha, and moved on. The horizon shimmered as though hiding what it didn't wish to give back. By noon, they had collected the scattered remains of movement, a backpack zipper, glinting like jewelry, a sun-bleached map fused into curls, an empty bottle half melted to the sand. Each object felt heavier than its weight. The radio cracked with static shaped like voices but carried only wind. One rescuer swore he heard laughter drifting from the dunes, faint and layered. They paused, listening, but the sound was swallowed by heat. Above them, circling drones sent back footage of the vastness, 5 faint tracks spiraling inward until they simply stopped. Data without story, coordinates without truth. Later that evening, the recovered camera played back its final fragments. The video shimmered with heat distortion. Faces blurred, words warped by static. A voice said something about the horizon folding in half. Then laughter cut short. The last frame showed 5 shadows, merging into one shape before the screen went dark. The investigators watched in silence, the hum of the air conditioner mimicking desert wind. Someone whispered. They thought they were filming adventure. No one replied. Outside, the sunset mirrored the footage. The same blinding white fading into crimson haze. News outlets looped the footage worldwide within hours. The Skyline Route incident. The headline read, accompanied by satellite shots of the desert glowing like brushed metal. Commentators argued about equipment failure, dehydration, and modern hubris. In online threads, strangers analyzed the video frame by frame, claiming to see faces in the mirage. One clip of Serena saying, "Turn around now," trended for days before fading beneath newer stories. The desert remained silent through it all, reflecting each drone's light like a mirror held to the sky. Nothing more was found. Weeks later, a storm crossed the Skyline Route, the first in months. Rain struck the sand and hissed like cooling metal. Search flags collapsed, leaving streaks of color that bled into the ground. From above, the soaked basin gleamed like a mirror, the size of a country. At its center lay the ridge that had haunted every map, now reduced to shadow. The desert kept its secret, but at night, travelers reported a strange glow along the horizon. 5 faint lights, drifting together before dissolving with dawn. No one investigated. The weather alerts still flashed the same message, turn around now. Months later, the Skyline Route reopened under a softer sun. New engines roared through the checkpoint, their sound bouncing off clean signs that gleamed like new promises. A small convoy of travelers filmed introductions for a channel that thrived on danger. Their laughter rode the wind, carefree and loud enough to drown the low hum of static that came from the radio whenever they faced the west. A ranger watched them pass, frowning as his dashboard lit with a weather alert. He turned the volume up, but the voice broke apart in interference. "Turn around now," it whispered, barely audible, as the cars disappeared into brightness. In the editing bay of a downtown studio, a producer queued up old footage for a Missing Explorers documentary. The screen flickered between recovered clips and satellite images. For an instant, static formed a face, then dissolved. He leaned closer, rewinding, but the pattern was gone. The playback bar glitched, repeating Serena's half-smile. Lucas wave, the shimmer of the desert. He muttered that technology had memory like sand, always rearranging, never erasing. Outside the window, heat rippled above the asphalt, though it was winter. Truckers crossing the ridge at night reported radio interference, a rhythmic clicking like footsteps pacing beside their vehicles. Some swore they heard laughter behind the static, others a whisper repeating their route coordinates. Dispatch logged the anomalies and dismissed them. Yet every few hours, a line of text scrolled across dashboards linked to weather data. Turn around now. No one traced the source. The message vanished when approached, like heat haze after dark. The desert had learned to speak digitally. At dawn, a new group of friends filmed a launch sequence for their travel vlog. Same road, same enthusiasm, same refusal to check forecasts. The drone camera captured perfect symmetry, tires rolling over the same cracked paint where the previous tracks had vanished. Their laughter syncs to the beat of a reused playlist. The first frame of their footage glowed warmer than it should, a thin red flare blooming across the lens. "That looks cinematic," one of them said. The echo of that phrase lingered longer than sound should. From orbit, a satellite captured an image of the Skyline Route, glowing like a molten thread. Analysts noted identical heat, signatures appearing at 5 equidistant points along the ridge before fading. That night, a new alert uploaded to all navigation systems. Extreme heat advisory. Travel not recommended. Most ignored it. Somewhere in the desert center, the wind rose, carrying a familiar whisper over endless sand. It wasn't warning or threat anymore. It was ritual. The story restarted itself, bright and unblinking, under a burned sky that never learned mercy.